Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Behold podcast on the Genre Equality channel. I'm Hitzer.
Isa.
This week we're going to be talking about the best films of 2021 so far. We've made it past June. We're in July right now actually, so we are past the midway mark, and I think we can safely say what are the best movies of the year so far. With a small caveat that we have talked about some incredible films in previous episodes of Genre Equality, for example.
hmm
So the movies that we're talking here are movies that we have not mentioned yet, so that we've not talked about at all. Of course, previously we've mentioned and reviewed at length films like Saint Maud, The Mitchells versus the Machines,
Yep.
stuff such as that, which I would rank in my top 10. But so this is all fresh lah. Like we have not talked about this before. We'll be talking about The Father, Minari, another Round, which is the Danish film starring Hannibal himself, Mads Mikkelsen, and Judas and the Black Messiah. This is a very like front loaded film centric episode where the films have a lot of like awards attention. A
Yeah.
lot of people know about these movies, right? We're gonna compensate for that in our next episode where we'll talk about the hidden gems of the year.
hmm
But I think like these movies need to be like front and center because they've received all this recognition for a reason. It's much deserved.
Oh yeah, totally agree.
All four of these movies are incredible. And before we get into the reviews for all four of them, right? Like which would you say is your favorite film of the four?
I think Minari has to be it. Like it's a very tough fight between the father and Minari.
Mm.
But Minari for me was a more enjoyable watch. Like there were kind of like these tender moments, in
Mm-hmm.
particular that we'll get into later that really kind of caught me. Like the father is brilliant in so many ways, right? It's
Mm.
just like a master class of like these acting titans just kind of like smashing it all throughout the entire thing. But it's not an easy watch in that sense, right?
Oh yeah.
It is uncomfortable and heartbreaking. Well, kind of like almost all the films are heartbreaking in their own sort of way. But
Mm.
but yeah, for me, I think Minari definitely stands out. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so I don't understand this like whole 50% is not in English thing that pushed it to best foreign film, and it's just like
Oh, that was just a Golden Globes thing.
yeah, but still,
Yeah.
like it's so ridiculous because like you don't. It's about as American as it can get, right? As far as the movie goes.
Mm.
Um, but
It's
yeah,
made by an American studio, A24.
yeah,
It's played entirely by, okay, besides the grandmother, like Korean American actors.
yeah,
It's set in America, like 100% of the movie is in America, right?
yeah.
I mean, I don't get it. It's not a foreign film
It's not a
for
foreign film.
Americans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
in the least bit. So that's just puzzling to me. But like I'm glad that it showed really well
Mm-hmm.
in the festival circuit, and it got the recognition it deserved. Yeah, but definitely stand out for me. I think it's just something to do with like being able to just being familiar, right, with like the whole like Asian family kind of like dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously not specific to me, right? Because I'm not Korean. No,
Yep.
I'm living in America. But there's just so many kind of like touchstones there,
Mm-hmm.
that just make it a really kind of like endearing film that makes you very invested.
Yes,
Yes.
there are moments of warmth and light in Minari that is not entirely present in the first film that we'll be talking about, which is
Yep.
The Father.
hmm
The reason I said that The Father is a difficult watch or a challenging watch is because of film or a narrative about dementia or Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Um, it really should not be an easy watch, lah.
No, no,
It's
no. Of course not.
one of my personal greatest nightmares. Not forgetting yourself,
Yeah.
losing one's identity. And this film stars Anthony Hopkins, who plays a character called Anthony, who is 80 years old. He is mischievous. He's living defiantly alone and rejecting the care or caregivers that his daughter Anne encouragingly introduces to him.
Yep.
Yet help is also becoming a necessity for Anne, who is Anthony's daughter, because she can't make daily visits anymore, and
hmm
Anthony's grip on reality due to his dementia, his mental condition, is unraveling, is deteriorating. And we are put into the perspective of Anthony as we experience the ebbs and flows of his memory, how much his own identity and past can Anthony cling to?
Yeah.
And we as an audience member are not sure what is real and what is not either. What is present, what is past, what is future. So the film is about how does Anne cope as she grieves with the loss of her father, while he still lives and breathes before her. But it's also about the father himself. How does he process all of this when he can't even get the timelines correct? You know what I mean? Incredibly difficult feature to watch. Heartbreaking,
Hmm.
heart-wrenching, painful.
Hmm.
Masterclass acting by Oscar winners Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman.
Yeah,
Both of them deliver another Oscar-winning turn. And Anthony Hopkins fully deserves his Oscar this year
absolutely.
for The Father. It's a film full of intelligent performances, disorienting time slips, and powerful theatrical effects. Which is interesting because this film was actually based off a play. And unlike a lot of the other movies based on a play, right, that
Hmm.
are set inside a single house or a single location, I mean, it does feel play to a sense,
Yeah.
but because of the visual trickery from its director, the way you slip in and out of time, the how faces change and things like that, the confusion of it,
Hmm.
it feels more cinematic than other play adaptations,
Yeah.
to its benefit lah. Great film overall. This is my personal favorite of the year so far. Not to dismiss the other films that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Some of you may be wondering like why like Nomadland is not here. We've already talked about Nomadland,
At
and
length,
Nomadland
yes.
is, yeah, also technically a film that was released last year,
Yeah.
so that doesn't quite count. You've seen The Father quite recently, actually.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Um. First of all, can I say, right? I was so
Mm.
surprised to find out that Zeller is Zeller's first movie.
Mm.
Because he's very deft at the kind of storytelling that he wants to do on screen, which is surprising considering that's not his main like his mainstay like kind of creative output.
He's a
Um,
playwright, right?
yeah, he's a playwright. So I
Yeah.
to find out, that at the first round, like he gets something like The Father out. He was working with some of these amazing kind of actors, and just some of the visual flourishes and creative decisions in the way that the narrative unfolds in more senses than one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, was really really surprising. I totally understand why Hopkins deserved to win.
Mm-hmm.
It is insane that at his age, he's what, 80-ish now, like Anthony Hopkins is 80-ish now, 83 or something like that.
Correct. Yeah.
And he has like such a storied,
Co-
stacked career, right? Like some of
mm-hmm.
the most iconic roles in cinema, in modern cinema history, has been played by him.
Hey,
uh
I didn't realize that like two Hannibals are in our episode this week.
oh yeah.
Anthony Hopkins and Matt Mikkelsen both delivering great performances.
Yeah, yeah. Oh wow, yeah, Hannibal.
Y- Yeah.
Uh, we should have an episode on Hannibal. Okay, anyway, we'll get back to that another time. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like someone who has played so many like kind of iconic characters and all of that, but he completely disappears into this role. At no point in time do you feel like he's acting, right? Like
Yeah.
it comes off completely natural. Like the totality of his performance is hidden behind a very very convincing, um just convincing kind of like portrayal of a man
Mm.
that's kind of like losing it, right, in his own head, and he's too proud to kind of come to terms to that. But as the film
Mm-hmm.
goes along, he kind of realizes, right, like there's no point in
Mm-hmm.
struggling, or there's no point in even trying to explain where he's at, just because he feels so lost. And like some of the lines, right, he delivers, like I couldn't, like I started, like I burst into tears actually when we get to the end, and
Mm-hmm.
just that one line, "I'm losing all my leaves."
Mm-hmm.
I lost it. Like damn, just that last couple of closing minutes is one of the most like heart wrenching things I have seen in a while.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Like what's so deeply scary about The Father is that, without obvious first person camera trickery, right? It puts
Yeah.
us into Anthony's head. We see and don't see what he sees and doesn't see. we are cleverly invited to assume that certain passages of dialogue are happening in reality, and then they are shown that they aren't. We experience with Anthony step by step what appears to be the incremental deterioration of his condition. You
Yeah.
know, the disorienting time slips, the time loops, people morph into other people, situations get elided or eluded. The apartment's furniture seems suddenly and bewilderingly to change. There's a scene which he had appeared to follow that appears to follow the previous one sequentially.
Hmm.
Turns out to be preceded. To be
Yeah.
the one before it. Or like it's to be in Anthony's delusion of his memory, or the duration of his memory, is something else.
Yeah.
And new people he doesn't recognize, like played by Mark Gatiss or Olivia Williams, keep appearing in his apartment and responding to him with that same sweet smile of patience
Yeah.
when he asks what they are doing there.
Hmm.
Like it feels like the universe is gaslighting us, gaslighting Anthony,
Yeah.
with these people, although that's clearly not the case. And you're right. Hopkins's final speech to Williams is the one that reduced me to blubbering mess.
Yeah.
Like I cried as well. But the most subtly poignant moments are those in which Anthony, will laugh. There is like flashes of his old roguish, charming self.
Yeah.
And Anne and his carer will like supportively laugh along with him. And to some degree, it's like a nervous laughter because Anne knows just how easily his mood or his mental state can turn.
Hmm.
Um, but it's also like mostly tragic because you see like a man of that stature and that charm, so self-possessed, so confident, so larger than life,
Yeah.
like that's gone from him. Like he used to be so charming and he's not anymore. He used to be so smart and so witty and he's not anymore. It's tragic. And there's little that you can do besides cry in those moments. Even though it's sometimes funny, but also mostly uncomfortable.
Hmm.
It's yeah. I mean, it's wonderfully uncomfortable. That's what I can say about this film.
Yeah. It is. It is. It's a tough watch, right? Like,
Mm,
especially I think if you're going in expecting something linear, right? As
mm-hmm.
an audience, it's hard to kind of like keep track of what's going on. But again, that's like the brilliance of it. That's the whole kind of point.
Yep.
I will say though, since we brought up kind of like Mark Gatiss, when he came on screen, it took me out for a moment. It's like, oh my god, it's Mycroft.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that voice, right? And then the way that he speaks, it's
Mm-hmm.
just so indicative of that. But yeah, that took me out for a moment when he first appears as not Paul.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it is. I think we've done a number of films here and there, with regards to like deteriorating mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
The Father is probably the first I've seen that
Mm-hmm.
does it so deftly, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is not played up for dramatic results, right? Like it really feels like, you are part of his experience within his own head as it kind
Mm-hmm.
of unravels over time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like, yeah, it is so, it feels important, right? There's a weight to it, that you are culpable of, together with him, right? As an audience member, just because of the kind of twists and turns in the narrative, right? Like you're caught up in that as well. So
Yeah.
every bit of confusion is his as much as your own. Every bit of loss that you feel,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of who he may have been, because we don't know that exactly, right? Like the flashes that you were talking about,
Yeah.
feels right. There's loss there, right? There's an emptiness there, or an absence there, that you want to see more of, but it's never gonna be, right? Because even he like is resigned to that, at some point in time in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that crazy. Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about Anthony Hopkins, and no doubt, still at his age, right? So is this his second Academy Award?
It's surprising. Like he should have like 20 by now, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
he's the oldest recipient, as of the Father. But
Mm-hmm.
Olivia Colman is like, I'm such a huge fan. She's so good in everything that she does. It's so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like just having her there, and just having her on screen to kind of like play off all of these like very mercurial moments by Hopkins. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's a joy. It's a joy to watch two amazing actors at kind of like height of their powers, if so to say,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of going at it in such a, like, it feels effortless, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of mind blowing when you try and wrap your head around the things that you're actually trying to understand, right? As the narrative
Mm-hmm.
unfolds,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
good.
It almost makes you like a bit uh angry at Westworld for like not using Anthony Hopkins properly.
Oh
Like
yeah,
he was such like I mean he was cool. He's a cool character in Westworld. Don't get me wrong. It's just
yeah.
that he clearly he phones it in there. It's still an amazing performance, but they don't
Mhm.
require as much of him as he could
Yeah,
deliver.
yeah.
You know.
But they just needed the gravitas, right? Like he
Hmm.
comes with the Anthony Hopkins package, and they didn't need more than that, which is very
Yeah,
very sad, right? You can point to that. You can point to him in like the MCU as Odin as well.
that's true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which I think is even more problematic, right? Like given
Mm-hmm.
just how amazing he is in almost anything he's seen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of nuts, right? Like I remember watching some of his films when he was really really young, some of the Shakespeare stuff that he was doing,
Yeah.
his version of Othello, the reverse Othello,
Mm-hmm.
that was like completely, I was completely enraptured by that. And it's nuts. It's really nuts to kind of see like a man who has kind of dedicated his entire life to cinema and the stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and to see such a incredible, convincing, believable performance, sometimes you just like, I couldn't shake. Oh, and the fact that they're both called Anthony, right?
Yeah.
um he is they share the same name and all that. Like there are moments in time that I just felt like, oh shit, I really hope that he doesn't go that way.
Yeah.
And I know it's all me, and it's all like kind of a in my head, but like
Mm-hmm.
damn, that would be a sad way to go,
Yeah.
for a man of his stature.
Yeah, like the big difference between a lot of this and like the dementia narratives that we've previously talked about, like say in BoJack Horseman
Yeah.
or in what was that called, Castle Rock, and
Mm.
um the relic. The big difference is that there isn't that genre element that you
Yeah.
can kind of distance yourself with.
Yeah.
It feels almost like too real, which is kind of the point of the film. And I think like it has, it sneakily utilizes like great production design,
Oh
and
yeah.
like, and one thing that's like a lot of people don't mention is like how uncannily good the editing is, which is
Mm.
key to the film as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
how the editing puts the viewer into the same state of distress as this main character. And Florian Zeller, as you mentioned, in adapting his own play, has carried over this intimate quality of a staged chamber drama, not to just show a man dealing with dementia, but also offer a way into his mind with haunting, deeply affecting, and a very memorable narrative, as well as showcasing the pain of the people around him and his daughters and his carers as well, are not forgotten.
Yeah.
One of the best films of the year, one of the best performances of the year. I know there was a bit of heat on Anthony Hopkins because a lot of people assume Chadwick Boseman being would get a posthumous Oscar for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Yeah.
But like I mean, to be like really honest, Anthony Hopkins like objectively delivered a better performance than Boseman's final performance. So
Yeah. I
I
agree.
mean,
I
yeah.
mean, I really liked Ma Rainey's, but like this is hard. This is hard to beat, right? Like honestly, I was just taking a look at everything that was nominated, right? Within the best actor category.
Hmm.
Like it's head and shoulders, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Not to put down any of the other nominees, but damn, like it's
Yeah.
very very hard to beat Anthony
Yeah.
Hopkins at it's crazy to be 83 and be at the peak of your powers, right? Like it's insane.
Yeah, yeah. This performance would have won any other year, including this year.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah. Kudos to Anthony Hopkins, Olivia Colman, Florence Zeller for a great movie based off his play. One of my favorites. Then now we'll go into Isa's favorite of the year so far, which is Minari,
Hmm.
which is a tender and sweeping story about family and what roots us. It follows a Korean American family that moves into a tiny Arkansas farm in search of their own American dream.
Yeah.
The family home changes completely with the arrival of the sly, firecracker, foul-mouthed, incredibly loving grandmother as well, who kind of steals the film, to be honest.
Yeah.
And amidst the instability and challenges of this rugged new life in the Ozarks, Minari shows the undeniable resilience of family and what it takes to make a home. It's a very universal story, despite it being rooted in Korean American culture or
Hmm.
Korean culture in general. And writer director Lee Isaac Chung, in tackling this interpersonal drama about the American dream in the deep South,
Yeah.
really tunnels deep into his own past and his own upbringing, which is what makes this film so authentic.
Hmm.
What did you love most about Minari?
Oh man. Yoon Yoo Jun's performance made me miss my grandmother.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, she really did make me miss my grandmother. Um, it's kind of crazy to see that. I think out of everyone, if we're gonna make comparisons, right? Like the acting here isn't as stellar, right, as the
mm,
father, but they were performances that were believable, and they were performances that the movie sorely needed, and
yep.
it fit in a way that just felt natural, um, to what the story was telling, right? I mean,
Mm,
like Yun and Han Yeri, who I don't know if I've actually seen her in anything else.
mm-hmm,
To the two very kind of like precocious little kids that I really really adore. They're just adorable.
yep.
But with Yun with her grandmother, that really kind of like is the sticking point for me. Just to be uprooted from Korea, to move into the middle of America, to assist her daughter, who is trying to support her husband's dream. All of that like combined, all these little beautiful, painful, awkward, tender moments that you have with living with family in close proximity
Mm-hmm,
is just it's a joy to watch, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's just so much there, right? Gets packed into the movie's less conspicuous moments, less plot conspicuous moments,
Mm,
so to say. I really really did enjoy the whole thing. I think it's easy. I For a moment it was um out all the way leading up to, I guess, like the church, the first time you go to church, and
right,
then
right.
you kind of get lost in the fact, right? Because a lot of it is limited to the farm itself, and like these wide swaths of nature and field and greenery,
Mm-hmm,
absolutely beautiful stuff. And then you realize that it's not just the challenges they are facing trying to start a farm, and moving from California out to Arkansas and all of that. This is like 1980s Arkansas,
yeah,
and it is rough being Korean
yeah,
in
yeah.
1980s Arkansas. Yeah, just like that church scene made me cringe so badly with some of the things that they kind of had to deal with. Um,
The thing that makes you super cringe is that like the churchgoers and the people asking them insensitive questions like aren't actually malicious
no,
or like overtly racist. They're just
yeah,
ignorant and don't know any better lah.
yeah,
And I like that they aren't like almost caricaturely depicted as like those like redneck idiots.
yeah.
They're fundamentally like nice people. They just don't know what they're talking about lah.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that like David's kind of strange Johnny, the white boy,
Mm-hmm.
he finds at church, and like that little scene where he stays over at Johnny's place,
Yeah.
which was really really cute. But that interaction with kind of like the redneck father in the morning, right?
Yep.
Was like I think it's the best indication of that, right? Like he
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't know, and he's well intentioned and all of that, and at the end of the day, like he imparts his own kind of like wisdom to a child who's completely foreign to him,
Yep.
in the most sweet way, in his own sweet way. When I think is that, but like still, at that point in time, I was just like, oh yeah, okay, I'm forgetting like the greater context of what they're struggling with, right? And in addition to that, having Koreans, a Korean community nearby enough, but not being able to be part of that community, just like kind of hits home, right? And how isolated the situation actually is because of the decisions
Mm-hmm.
that Jacob has made.
Yes, exactly. The film is mostly about Jacob lah, per se, but it's really about the entire family,
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes a great film is not like a novel, but it's more like a great short story.
Mm.
It tunnels deep into a very limited set of characters
Yeah.
in a limited time while telling a very tender, keenly observed story that doesn't attempt to go too big in its scope of vision.
Hmm.
And such is the case with this film, lah, which I think benefits enormously from writer director Lee Isaac Chung's mining of his childhood.
Yeah.
It's like Alan Kim is great, as you mentioned, who plays David, the youngest
Yeah.
member of the Yee family. And they begin the film by uprooting themselves from California to backwoods Arkansas during the Reagan administration, which is let's not get into that lah.
Yeah.
But it's all because like David's determined father Jacob, played by Stephen Yeun, is convinced that he can create a successful business by growing Korean produce and selling it to vendors in the South.
Hmm.
And as the story progresses, it becomes clear that Jacob's fierce and unwavering belief that he can find his own version of the American dream on his meager farm is a belief that only he shares, often to the detriment of David, to the detriment of the older sister,
Yeah.
to the detriment of his mother, and his wife. They even supplement their tiny income by like sexing chicks at a local farm.
Hmm.
And like David has a shaky relationship with the grandmother, Sunja, whose personality is often at odds with their more like Americanized brood, which is very interesting. Contrast between first and second generation immigrants.
Yeah.
And Minari works for all those reasons, but chief among them is like the undeniable authenticity of it. I think
Mm.
like filmmakers are often prone to turning their own lives into stories,
Yeah.
but it's rare for such a story to feel universal and recognizable,
Yep.
especially to those who don't have a Korean heritage.
Hmm.
The film's own heritage has been, I think, hard to pin down, as you mentioned earlier, right? For some awards bodies,
Yeah.
is it a Korean film? Is it an American film? I mean, we would argue that it's an American film. It's unquestionably an American movie. And there are a lot of reasons why. Shot and set in America, it includes mostly American actors. It's produced by an American studio. And on a creative level, it's also true because Minari depicts the quest of the American dream in a way that is wholly authentic and correct.
Hmm.
Like the concept of the American dream always sounds admirable and idealized, but Minori acknowledges the harsh reality of how it looks and feels different for everyone, especially those who immigrate to the country to achieve the success that they've heard from others, but not actually have first-hand experience with.
Yeah.
The pitfalls and appeals of that dream are embodied in Stephen Yeun, who probably has one of his better performances here,
Yeah. For sure.
ever since he transitioned to cinema. Jacob and Monica, right? They represent the two halves of the American dream.
Hmm.
Like there's the aspiration inherent in hoping you can find financial success by working hard
Yep.
and convincing others of your worth. As seen through Jacob, and Monica, is working equally long hours and balancing being a caring mother to her children, but also represents the reality crashing down on that aspiration and hope.
Yeah.
These dichotomous performances are as deft as Chong's script. They
Mm.
are humane and painful and understandable, which results in a very um, uh, keenly observed cinematic slice of life, lah,
Yeah.
filled with killer performances, a very quiet, like almost like I don't want to say unambitious, but
It's
yeah,
modest,
yeah.
like it's very modest in its depiction, very scant. Is scant, not yeah, it's scant in a good way, right?
Hmm,
Like
hmm.
it's not showy or ostentatious or anything of the sort, much like the
Yeah.
family. Mm.
Yeah. Like very sensitively written,
Yeah.
sensitively acted, beautifully shot. Like the Ozarks never looked better.
Yeah.
And it has this charming, very sparingly used score, which is very nice. Like it doesn't overwhelm you. It's so engaging that it's easy to forget how radical it is.
Mm.
It's actually quite modest, but it actually it feels different. And the weight and the power of the film doesn't quite hit you until you finish watching it. Like it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
What, and
Yeah.
like it's intimate and expensive. A film with a big heart.
It is. It is. Yeah. I'm completely taken by it, and the way in which like these very kind of special vignettes are just woven together for a very specific time in a very specific family's life.
Hmm.
And again, like we've said a number of times, right? Like it's kind of crazy and mind-boggling that so many of the films that we love have a specificity that allows it to be universal.
Hmm.
Um, and I think like Minari is a prime kind of like example again, right, of that. You may not you know be a Korean family trying to assimilate in 1980s America, but
Hmm.
like just the story itself and thematically what it's trying to uh
Convey. Yeah.
convey is
Yeah.
is universal in so many ways, and it's hard to it is so hard to kind of like tear yourself away from that, right? Like I was rooted in my chair for the entire duration of it. um
Yeah.
which is I mean like that's not as common as you would like to believe lah.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
really 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 love that. Yeah, it kind of left me wanting more, but at the same time, like
Hmm.
it ended the way it needed to end, right? Like it had
Hmm.
all the struggle and the triumph and the tragedy that you needed for this story.
Hmm.
um yeah, it's so apt, so well put together. Love it.
Yeah, yeah, love the nuanced naturalism. It makes Minari so captivating, so intimate. It doesn't tell a complicated story, but it doesn't need to. It lets the roots and branches of the family drama grow and become entwined with the audience's own stories, and that's what makes it feel so relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Minari. Like those were our top two films of the year lah. I mean, incredible stuff. Like it's hard to pick one over the other, and both have their own merits individually.
Agreed.
Next up, we move from America to Denmark, and from one Hannibal to another Hannibal,
To the young
who has
Hannibal.
become like to young Hannibal, who is actually not that young anymore, lah, but
Yeah,
younger Hannibal,
younger Hannibal.
who has become as iconic as Anthony Hopkins
I
in that
agree.
portrayal
I,
of
I
him.
think for a lot of people, Matt
Yeah,
Nicholson is Hannibal more so than Anthony Hopkins, right?
yeah.
Like I don't know how many people have spent time watching Hannibal, the TV show,
Mm.
that may necessarily know Hannibal, like the as in Silence of the Lambs. Um, yeah,
Agreed. Agreed. This is a Danish film called Druk in Danish, but in America and in other countries, it's called Another Round.
yeah,
And it's led by an intoxicating powerhouse performance from Mads Mikkelsen. Another Round is a Danish midlife crisis film
hmm,
that is filled with, ebullience and sorrow and humor and love. It's directed by Thomas Winterberg, and his story follows four high school teachers who test out a wild theory by a psychologist who wrote that humans should maintain always an alcohol level of 0.05%.
yeah,
Thus, these four bored high school teachers, they get increasingly drunker every day to see how it affects their social and professional lives.
yeah,
They think of it as an educational experiment of sort to test out this theory,
hmm,
and it's a cathartic exploration of disaffection, friendship, and how like merriment and melancholy can go hand in hand. At first, their like little experiment finds a bit of success actually. When they actually keep to the 0.05 blood alcohol limit, right?
yeah,
They become looser, they become more confident, they become able to engage in their professions and their spouses and their friends in a better way. But then it leads to this rabbit hole. It's like, what if we go above the 0.5% threshold, right? Could we get more bang for our buck?
yeah,
And obviously that causes a deterioration. Then it's and it's an insane premise, which I did not think would work. but it works because of Thomas Winterberg's direction
Yeah.
and Matt Mikkelsen's performance. And Thomas Winterberg, who I don't know whether you've read anything about him, lah, but the impetus of his story, right? It was actually his daughter Ida, who convinced him to make this film. And as he was shooting the film, his daughter Ida was killed in a car accident 4 days into filming.
Wow.
And Winterberg's response was to rework the script to make it more life affirming, not less life affirming.
Hmm.
And I think like the four men played by Matt Mikkelsen and alongside his friends Tommy, Nikolaj, and Peter, like who play the teachers at the same school.
Yeah.
Uh, great, like a great bromance of film about
Yeah.
friendship, and about celebrating life and about like this feeling of like not being fulfilled. You're not sure, ennui, right? You're not sure like what's wrong,
Hmm.
and you're using this pseudo scientific plan with with like hypotheses and research guidelines as a day drinking experiment to spruce up your life.
Yeah.
It works until it doesn't. And like I'm not gonna get into like the ending, which I fucking love. It's like one of the
Oh
best
yeah.
like film endings I've ever seen.
I
But
agree.
let's talk about the movie first. What do you think about Another Round?
I I recall when the film was kind of making its festival rounds and the trailer was kind of dropped at first.
Mm,
I really wanted to watch this because um when I was younger, I can't believe I'm saying it that way, but yeah, when I was younger, my friends and I had a rule that every time we went on holiday together, the moment
mm.
you landed, you got to start drinking.
Oh yeah,
And
we
the
all did that.
Yeah, and the goal is to maintain the buzz throughout the entire time you're there,
Mm-hmm.
until you get back on the plane,
Yeah.
right? So I was just like, okay, let's see this. Having done, I mean, obviously that's for leisure, right? We're on holiday and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
having done that, I was so curious as to see what the outcome of this experiment would be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on a very kind of like shallow surface level, I was just like, okay, no, this sounds like it's gonna be fun. Let's see where this goes. But
Mm-hmm.
to have tacked on to that, right? Like the entire experiment is just the excuse for laying into the audience what is many, like these four men have their problems, right? And this is just an excuse, right, for
Yeah.
them to step out of that, the places that they find themselves in at this point in time in their lives,
Y-
and just let loose, like, and kind of like be free of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you well, I came in with this and I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be like fairly fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be kind of like an interesting watch, and then you get smacked with a lot of like personal existential questions and like family drama,
Mm-hmm.
and just this whole idea of like the how our mental illnesses haunt us, and the
Mm-hmm.
escapes that we take the escapes that we take in a day-to-day fashion to escape them.
Mm-hmm.
um and yeah, so like such a, crazy kind of ride, seeing these men go about this experiment and how it affects their lives,
Mm-hmm.
to different kind of like varying conclusions, some good and some not so good.
Yeah.
uh yeah, so like, all of that all together like makes it for this crazy kind of like dramatic ride, roller coaster almost, where uh a binge of its own, right? It
Mm-hmm.
has all the highs and the lows of a very heavy night of drinking. That's
Yeah.
what the movie feels like. Um, but I think like at the end of the day, the way that it ends, the way that it wraps up, like that finale itself, has kind of the same quality as like, when your hangover finally clears the next day or 2 days
Mm.
for me now.
Yeah.
There's a moment of clarity before like the mundane sets in again, and it feels like that, right? Like there is like, the sun's just a bit brighter. Your senses feel a bit more alive.
Mm-hmm.
You feel free, right, of
Mm-hmm.
of the consequences of your relationship with alcohol the night before and everything else. There is a moment in time where you feel free, and I
Yeah.
feel like the end of the movie perfectly captures that and amplifies it to the point where it does feel extremely life affirming, right? Like the lessons that you have tried and what you've experimented with has brought you to a place of clarity, which is a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, yeah. Like at first, Martin and his friends, right? They place too much value on alcohol itself as the answer to their existential woes, lah. And like they don't truly understand or accept the fact that habitual drinking is a bottomless trapdoor.
Yeah,
That's what like low key alcoholism is, you know.
yeah,
Like they're trying to submerge their feelings of failure or mediocrity in booze. And they hope that eventually they'll find a way to swim in it, you know. But despite like another round's downward spirals as they start to spiral, it steers clear of gloom. I think like for all the tragedies and
yeah.
transgressions that unfold throughout, the film is actually surprisingly light on its feet and shockingly joyful. Winterberg like doesn't argue so much that drinking is a sin, but rather that drinking for the wrong reasons is sinful. Instead of for company and pleasure, the guys in the film they drink for the naughty thrill of
Yeah.
sneaking alcohol, breaks into their schedules at school, also for the validation of actually doing their jobs well. There's the substance to the substance abuse, but the substance isn't necessarily good. It's just there for better or for worse. It's all fun and games until somebody pisses the bed or someone stumbles into work plastered.
Yeah.
And like the premise on paper, I've felt almost certain that it could have become like either a farcical comedy
Hmm.
or a maudlin tragedy or morality tale, but it never quite does any of that.
No, no.
It instead of it never teeters on the brink of preachiness or platitudes, but the movie feels vibrantly personal.
Yeah.
It explores like the exhilaration of a low buzz, and of concocting a fairly ridiculous plan with your friends and then embarking on that plan, even though like you're too old for the shenanigans.
Yeah.
And I think it digs deep into the reasons why adults do things they can't even really explain to themselves.
Yeah.
Some combination of finding courage in unlikely places, and needing to compensate for all the ways that they feel that they failed themselves. And by the end, another round is a truly wonderful movie about trying to come to grips with life,
Hmm.
that is anchored by terrific performances and a real understanding of the discontent that all adults must learn to navigate in their own ways, lah.
Yeah.
It's a sort of dramedy that fuses tragedy, that just maybe that best represents what life really is, lah. It's sometimes melancholy, it's sometimes glorious, and sometimes it leads to like a really cathartic dance at the end.
Yeah.
And let's get to the ending. Like I cannot overstate enough my love for another round's ending, and a great deal of the joy is thanks to Matt Mikkelsen's musical number right at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is weirdly enough, I had no idea until this film, but he was a classically trained dancer. He is good, and it's not like the musical sequence comes out of nowhere. Like the movie like keeps hinting at you that he used to be a dancer, the
Yeah.
character.
Yeah. Yeah. They
you
keep
know
teasing it the entire way from like the genesis of their plan, right? At the dinner
yep.
table, right? Like they tease it, and then when it pays off in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like it's a moment of exuberance and like sheer performative release, right? That is such a joy to watch. It's such a joy
Mm-hmm.
to watch, and like it's just kind of like obviously he is there front and center, and we're all enjoying that. But he's just kind of like framed with like the students celebrating their graduation
Yep.
and the remainder of his friends. Oh
Mm-hmm.
man, it's just like so good. And I think at the start of the movie, if you told me that's how the movie ends, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah.
But it was perfect for the moment, and perfect, I think, in um what Ida was trying to say, right? Like
Mm.
if that that definitely has to be a big part of the changes that were made to make it more life affirming.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, there's just a pure joy in that, right? Like much in the same way that I think much earlier in the film, Nicolaj, yes, Nicolaj,
Mm-hmm.
who has this almost like childlike excitement every time they have to like write the next part of their paper,
Mm-hmm.
or he has like he observes Martin in his classroom, just like in his groove and doing his thing, and there's just like this look of glee on his face. That was just yeah, those moments of kind of like pure, unfettered joy at something so in the greater scheme of things, something just so nondescript,
Yeah.
uh, is what makes so much of this movie enjoyable.
Exactly. Yes. One of the best endings to a movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like I gotta be honest, the only like not that Another Round isn't a great film. It was nominated for like best international feature.
Hmm.
Rightly so because this was an actual international feature unlike Minari at the Oscars. But I mean to be honest, I just really wanted to talk about the ending. Like, it's like one of my favorite like final sequences in any
Yeah.
film,
Yeah.
and it's like it sends you out on the high.
Hmm.
Like I got so high after I watched that. Like this is one of the like few files that I just refuse to delete because I keep watching that last scene over and over again.
Yeah, it
So
is
great.
so good.
It functions as like a music video, uh, quality. It's a music video quality, right? It's that good that you can watch it
Yeah, yeah,
without
absolutely,
context.
for sure. Like I think that it's just one of those clips that you continue to see, and like functions in a very different way from say like the ending of Euphoria, for example, right? Which is a bit kind of like is out of place,
Yeah.
and like we talked about on that episode,
Mm-hmm.
or like all these kind of like the meme stuff that we've been getting with um the Baron's dance sequence in Falcon and Winter Soldier,
Right. Right. Right.
right,
Yeah.
and all of that. Like it's just so apt, and like Matt Mickelson, like props to him because like my perspective of his esteem has grown significantly watching him dance like that. Like damn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so many great roles that he's played over time.
Mm-hmm.
And this by far is one of my favorite just because the man can seriously dance. Um, so good, so good.
He used to be a gymnast and dancer. Like
Yeah,
how insane is that?
I did not know that. After the movie itself, I'm just like, really? Is that all him? So I went and
Mm-hmm.
Google it, and I went on like people are talking about it and stuff like that. And just like, yeah, it's totally legit. Like this is um this is him before he became the actor that we know, which is kind of like
Mm.
mind blowing. And
Yes.
I'm just glad that he got to play a role that allowed him to explore that, right? Like I don't think he's ever had any kind of like significant role that has allowed him to tap into that skill set that he's had for so long.
Yeah. I mean, like, Ben Swixon is not a young guy. Like he is,
No, yeah.
he late 40s, right?
Hmm.
But I mean, just fucking look at him. Like
It's insane.
he is like he has been fit since the day he came out of the womb till now.
Yeah.
Like he looks like he's chiseled out of granite. Like the guy has clearly like keeps in shape. You know what I mean? And I think he will like maintain this like he's one of those like old men. He will be one of those old men like that has like this incredible body and can like lap you when you're running.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised at all. It has to be that Scandinavian like bloodline, some Viking stuff going
Mm.
on there for
Y-
sure.
Yeah,
Um
the fucker is definitely a Viking.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's just so he's got this um like his brood face, right? Like his brooding
Mm-hmm.
face is absolutely like classical. You know, like even within this film, and there were moments in time where it kind of borders between like it doesn't quite fit with the film itself, like at the dinner
Yep.
table or like when he's like pouring himself a drink in the middle of his kitchen, like he
Mm-hmm.
he verges on brooding, and that brooding face is like so great. But it never quite get there. It's like oh, so good, so good.
Oh yeah, 100%. And that was the Danish film Another Round. Danish film Another Round is actually just come to Singapore. It
Yeah,
was released by Encore Films, so you can watch it at Golden Village. So there you go. It's not just available in VOD. You should go support in theaters lah, because if you want to encourage these distributors to bring in um, more art house international films,
yep.
then go watch it in cinemas lah. Yeah, and next up, the final film we'll be talking about, last but not least, is Judas and the Black Messiah. It is directed by Shaka King. Although, like, if you thought it was directed by Spike Lee, I will forgive you because it feels like a
Oh
Spike Lee
yeah.
film that is not Spike Lee. It's a historical powerhouse political thriller featuring incredible performances by reunited Get Out stars Daniel Kaluuya, who plays Black Panther Party chairman Fred Hampton,
Yep.
and Lakeith Stanfield as William O'Neill, who is a career thief turned FBI informant who infiltrates the Black Panther Party's inner circle and informs on them to the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
This is a scalding account of oppression and revolution, coercion and betrayal, never once holding back on its, incendiary, electrifying depiction of Fred Hampton, who is great, alongside O'Neill's vivid inner turmoil of having to betray his own people. It's a riveting tale of moral conflict and an urgent indictment of America's systemic history of racism.
Mm-hmm.
uh, Great, exciting film filled with really, really good performances all around. Um, if you've seen the Trial of the Chicago Seven, you may remember Fred Hampton from that film too.
Yeah.
And he dies midway, of course, lah, but we're not. The movie doesn't focus on him. The movie focuses on obviously the Chicago Seven.
Yeah.
But it almost feels as if like a nice complementary to that movie, because
Yeah.
this is honestly the more interesting story. And it's great. It's one of the best undercover story I've ever seen. Undercover, it's like the reverse Black Klansman almost. It's like instead of infiltrating the KKK, you're infiltrating the Black Panther Party, right?
Yeah.
And it's also a really good uh, Black empowerment story too,
Mm-hmm.
and almost Shakespearean thrill of betrayal as well. Hence the title, like Judas. Great film, great performances. Jesse Plemons is in it
Ooh.
as well, who I love.
Yeah.
A bit underrated from all the talk about this film, about how great Kaluuya is, about how great Lakeith Stanfield
Yeah.
is, and Jesse Plemons. A lot of people like fail to mention Dominic Fishback, who plays Deborah Johnson, who is
Mm.
Fred Hampton's fiance or girlfriend,
Yeah.
baby mama. She is incredible in this film as well, and a lot of people forget about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Martin Sheen is almost unrecognizable as FBI Director
Oh,
J.
but
Edgar
he makes
Hoover.
your skin crawl. So good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's the anti Jet Bartlett in this film, shall we say?
Yeah, for sure. Uh,
Yeah. Great film. What do you think about Judas and Black Messiah?
um, I was excited to get onto this because, like you said, right, having watched Chicago 7, I was just
Hmm.
like, okay, I have some kind of cursory knowledge after doing some research, reading here and there after Chicago 7. I would really I wanna see, what the narrative is on the other side of things, right? Or rather, I guess you could say the prequel to Chicago 7.
Mm.
Not
Most of it is before, but the
some of it.
final part, the
Yeah,
final part takes place on the same time, lah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just wanting to see kind of the other side of the coin to that, right? Like having done some read up, not prior to these two films, I've not had that much kind of in-depth knowledge of the
Mm-hmm.
Black Panther Party and all that, just kind of cursory things in American history that I've had
Mm-hmm.
to study before. But yeah, so it's like super super interested to kind of like dive into that, and I think they did a really really good job of telling the story as true to life as they possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
Kaluuya's performance of Hampton is
Yeah.
so believable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can put that up with any one of the recorded speeches that of that Hampton has given.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the tone of his voice and his general demeanor and posture um as he when he speaks publicly, right? Such a commanding presence, such a charismatic voice, and just so moving in the way. And I think like Kaluuya like nails every point of that. But
Mm-hmm.
what we don't see, right, or what most of us as audiences won't know is like what Hampton is like as an everyday man, right? And it's moments
Mm-hmm.
like that where I think like Kaluuya really hits it home, right? That
Yeah.
that Hampton as a man is um he is congruous, right? Like his public persona and what he believes in is also very much in line with the kind of like man of conviction that he is even in his private life,
Mm-hmm.
which is played to perfection alongside Dominic Fishback's Deborah Johnson,
Yeah.
who to me is just like she's so good in the moments that she has on camera,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's just like kind of mind blowing. And I think especially any time that it's just Hampton and Johnson, like alone, the confrontations that they have with each other, or rather a lot of the time Johnson with Hampton, right?
Yeah.
And just like leaning into the fact that from the beginning, like she's like, do you like poetry? And she's a poet and all that. The
Mm.
way their conversations carry on is such a battle of personality and wits, both of which you understand and are justified
Mm.
from different points of view, and are so put across so eloquently in like the poem that she reads to him in
Mm.
that moment is just like so good. Like you hold your breath, right, for it. But yeah, like really, really solid stuff from Daniel Kaluuya in his first outing as a Black Panther and not the right hand man of Black Panther. Uh,
Yeah, in the other Black Panther.
the other Black
Um,
Panther.
yeah, well, weirdly enough, a lot of people don't know this, but Black Panther the comic book actually came out before Black Panther the party.
Yeah.
Yeah, which led to like a weird period of time for like 3 or 5 years where Marvel decided to
Uh huh.
change Black Panther's name to the Black Leopard, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was so weird, like it just doesn't have a ring to it.
Yeah, and like the way they had to go about it in story was absolutely bizarre, right?
Yeah.
Like it had to do with like changing deities and like all of that, and
Mm.
the costume change was just ridiculous. But yes, fun
Yeah.
fact, fun fact.
Yeah, like, and I guarantee you, like, the Black Panther Party would not have minded, like, Black Panther being called Black Panther lah. Like, they kind of share the same message, to be honest, you know.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
and it's great lah. Like Lakeith Stanfield probably is more of the lead of the film than Daniel Kaluuya is. Weirdly
Yeah.
enough,
Mm-hmm.
that he does play, Fred Hampton lah, who is like the major force of the film. But the real story is Lakeith Stanfield's William or Bill,
Yep.
who is thrust into the world of the Black Panthers, and he's at first like kind of shocked by the organization, right, and their strength, and he slips uneasily into their ranks, and then kind of finds himself taken in
Yeah.
by their mission and by Chairman Fred's charisma and conviction. And then, like, his visibility in the party grows, and so does his apparent allegiance to the group. Even his grim FBI handler Roy Mitchell, who is Jesse Plemons, keeps asking
Mm.
more and more of him. This is a real life story. The real William O'Neill didn't just become a member of the group; he became a high-ranking official. He became the head of security at one point, and his prodigious rise within it allowed him the chance to not only sell them out repeatedly,
Yeah.
but to irrevocably put into motion events that would eventually lead to a tremendous tragedy, the assassination of Fred Hampton.
Mm-hmm.
And lay it into Bill's ascension, like, is of course the story of Chairman Fred, who was just 20 years old when he became the leader of the Chicago branch,
Yep.
of the Black Panthers, and he is so good in it lah. Like, and Cooley and Stanfield, two actors who seem like destined to be hailed as like this film as like career westerns.
Mm.
It's such an incendiary watch. No one plays like twitchy quite like Stanfield.
Yeah.
And we know he has plenty of reasons to twitch in this film, but like he's never broad in his mannerisms.
Mhm.
And few working actors today can telegraph quite so much emotion with near imperceptible facial expressions,
Agreed. Yeah.
the slightest change of his mouth and things like that. Kaluuya almost has an easier job at playing a bombastic role,
Yeah.
a more scenery chewing
It's.
role, and he's great in it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
he's at least initially bombastic, but I think Shaka King and Kaluuya chose to introduce him to his at first, right? He's introduced us through speeches and through public appearances. It's
Yeah.
wise, but then you meet the personal Fred, who is more nuanced, who's more careful, and who's more unsure of himself,
Y-
unlike his public persona.
Yeah.
And Kaluuya is truly able to capture every inch of the man, both the public facing side and the personal side of him.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred Hampton was truly an incredible revolutionary. The film paints a vivid portrait of 60s Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
that feels very lived in. It doesn't feel like it's a period piece. It feels like now, and you get sucked into it. And Fred Hampton is so charismatic that you fully believe that this black militant nationalist leader could form allegiances with a neo-Nazi white supremacist party. He's that charismatic that like he could get a white supremacist group to team up with him. That's insane. That actually happened in real life. He went around, talking to like various militant groups of all sorts, of all like inclinations. Like some are like more towards his side, like Latino people, Asian Americans, Polynesian people. But then like he also tapped into the anger of like poor white people and white supremacists,
Yeah.
because he understands that they have the common enemy, which is the federal government. His essential argument to them is just like, let's take down the federal government. They fucked you, they fucked us, and then like when we win, we can fight then lah. The
Yeah.
enemy of my enemy thing. What a great approach, where like when he goes into that church and like he makes that speech to the white supremacist group, and then they're all like, yeah, okay. What an insane bit of history. I did not know that until I looked it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I had absolutely no idea that happened. Like the whole Rainbow Alliance thing that was going on.
Yeah.
Like I think it gets buried over in the greater kind of like discourse about the Black Panthers and all of that. But that one speech, damn, so good, so
Hmm.
good. As with any of the speeches that he has kind of like given, right?
Yeah, when he goes
Um,
into like the rival gangs HQ and all that. Yeah.
yeah. What he
Yeah.
says to the crowns, what he says to
Yeah.
the disciples, like damn, like it really it really is quite something, or even like such a smart, um the breakfast for children thing is like so incredibly smart, right? Like you
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
you feed the kids, you teach them there, and at the end of the day, like the message at its very core is empowering, right? Like
Hmm.
I will train my body and my mind, right?
Hmm.
And all of that, it's just like all these kind of like instances of brilliance, but what I think what the film does quite effectively is that as much as you feel for Hampton and you feel for his cause, right, and you
Yep.
root for him,
Hmm.
uh, eventually, right, O'Neill has reason,
Mm.
and it goes through a very convoluted way, right? So he's just doing this to get out of the charges. He's doing it for
Hmm.
the money. He's doing it for the pride that he feels for what he's put into it as well. With the whole
Hmm.
thing with the C4 and all of that,
Yep.
particularly in that scene, right? But you understand, right? Like he's a man caught in a corner by
Mm.
many things, right? And I think Roy Clemens' portrayal of Roy Mitchell as well feels reasonable. It feels
Mm.
as in he has reasons as well, right, for facilitating what eventually happens.
Mm.
That is, I mean, maybe not justifiable necessarily, but understandable.
Mm.
And these three men are just kind of caught in this web um of well, not desire necessarily, a web of conflicting interests,
Yeah,
that
they all have their own principles lah.
yeah, right, and
Yeah.
and none of those principles are necessarily bad or necessarily evil, right,
Mm.
with the exception of Martin Sheen as J. Edgar Hoover, who's just like pure
Yeah.
evil.
Yep.
But yeah, and it's kind of crazy to watch, right? The kind of the world that orbited around Hampton,
Hmm.
and of course O'Neill being caught up in that while he himself like trying to survive, right? And of
Hmm.
course Clemens like truly believing, in his cause and
Hmm.
in the dangers that he felt the Black
Mm.
Panthers would have brought. Um,
Yeah.
and that
Like
like
when he
Mhm.
compared the Black Panthers to the KKK, right? Like at first you're like, what the fuck you talking about? And then he
No,
explains it,
yeah,
and then
and
you're like, huh, I
yeah,
actually kind of get it. Yeah.
exactly, right? Like that moment
Yeah.
where they're sitting at the restaurant and he talks about like the torture. I'm
Mm.
just like, yeah, that's completely reasonable, right?
Hmm.
Because as much as Hampton has a particular vision for it,
Hmm.
that's not to say that goal and that beautiful kind of like ideal isn't going to get abused as it comes down the line, and we see that very early on.
Yeah.
um you know it's kind of nuts to see how nuanced both the performances and the storytelling is here,
Mm.
right? Which is makes it such a great movie, just because like it's so easy to frame it as a very like straight up, okay, like this was like the second coming of Christ.
Hmm.
Right, and like Judas is just it's a schemy little like piece of shit, right?
Yep.
But they went the extra mile for that, both the actors and Shaka King as well,
Hmm.
to ensure that it felt as true to life as possible, and I really think that it did.
Yeah.
And I feel like it does benefit a lot. Sometimes when things are based on real life stories and you have footage of
Yep.
interviews and stuff like that, that doesn't always play to the what you're trying to do in the movie necessarily, right? Because it gives you a point of comparison for that particular actor's performance, whether
Hmm.
they captured like the demeanor and the turn of speech and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like interspersed with O'Neill's interview that he gave,
By the
really,
end, yeah.
yeah, it really does help the cause. Like, you
Mm.
completely believe that Lakeith Stanfield is Bill O'Neill, despite seeing the actual Bill O'Neill at the end of the day. And it
Yes.
drives home the entire performance when he says that I was an active part of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I pursued this. I was a man of action, and history, like, history will speak of me. Yeah. Like, that final line for that, like, encapsulates the in the brevity of Stanfield's performance, right? Because in
Mm.
those moments throughout the narrative, like, those are the things that he believed in, and it's crazy, right? Like, just kind of like the synergy of those two very vastly different, like the fictional performance itself and the real life interview. Um,
Also, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
him saying that, you kind of feeling for him also, and then like knowing that after he gave the interview in the 90s, just
yep,
hours later he hung himself. Like, it also shows that he knows that he knows that he was deluding himself to a certain point
yep,
also,
yep,
that he was the bad guy that people are making him out to be, like, but he is more than that,
yeah,
and the shades of gray in the quote unquote Judas, or the bad guy stories like you see in Aaron Burr or Salieri, or this, for example, it's important lah, to show
yep,
that where they're coming from and what their motivations are,
hmm,
and they're not like Judas because they're evil, but because they were kind of cornered, and they have their own principles that they're trying to live up to lah. And
yep,
sometimes you just can't. Yeah, I mean, great film overall. One of the best of the year. Really enjoyed this. It's actually Shaka King's only second movie.
really,
Uh, yeah, yeah. I'm not seeing his first movie either. So yeah, great, like big feature. Oh, I know it's not a debut lah, but it's kind of a debut because he's now thrust into the mainstream. Now
yeah.
people know who he is. He's probably gonna get a Marvel movie at some point. That's how these things
Yeah,
goes.
yeah,
You
it
know.
does feel that way. It really, really does. Like, I can see a number of characters being thrown his way for sure.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. Like if Ryan Coogler like wants to leave after Black Panther 2, like you could give Black Panther to Shaka King, and I
Yeah,
would be totally cool with that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. We'll see where that goes. I really, really wouldn't be surprised. Very, very honestly, it really does smell like it's up mouthfuls alley to do that.
definitely, definitely. And let's wrap it up by not ignoring television,
Mm,
but just like both of us giving a quick ranking of our top five TV shows of the year so far. So this is how we're gonna do it. We're both gonna rank from number five to number one.
yeah,
Isa is gonna give his number five. I'm gonna give my number five, and then four all the way up to one, and so on. We have made a bit of an effort not to cross pollinate our lists. So some of Isa's choices might actually be in my top five also, and vice versa.
yeah,
But we decided, like, instead of just like us, like, what's the point of having two top five lists if like all five entries are the same? So we chose to diversify. So think of this as the top 10 list, lah, to
yeah,
be honest.
yeah.
So let's begin with your number five. What's your number five TV show of the year so far?
My number five TV show of the year so far has actually been Kevin Hart's series on Netflix called Fatherhood.
For Fatherhood, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I saw the trailer. I thought, oh, Kevin Hart not doing like slapstick comedy. Let's have a look at it. And I was very,
Mm,
very surprised. I'm actually very, very taken by it. It has these amazingly scripted, heartfelt performances that completely threw me off guard. Right, like, it's not perfect, but it has a lot of heart, and like,
mm,
it completely establishes Kevin Hart as a competent dramatic actor,
mm-hmm.
with potential to be great in the future. Which is saying a lot, honestly, because I've never really up till this point enjoyed something that Kevin Hart has done as much as I've enjoyed this.
Same.
It's nuts to be able to say that. But then again, like, never thought I'll be a massive Aquafina fan, but now I am.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, I'm consistently being proven wrong. For many of these comedic actors who have just
Hmm.
shown incredible chops when it comes to doing drama. Yes,
Nice.
so that's my number five.
My number five is a show coming out of HBO. It's called It's a Sin. It's set in the early 1980s.
Hmm.
This is a mini series created and written by Russell T Davies, and it examines the dawn of the AIDS epidemic through the eyes of five young Londoners, and in five very brisk, often devastating episodes, encompassing the entirety of the decade. Davis kind of whips between outrageous scenes of hedonistic raunch and stark moments of confusion, sorrow, and terror as the reality of what AIDS is begins to hit.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Sin is a gut wrenching look at the toll of that horrific plague and the stigma that its patients faced. But it's also a joyful celebration of the radiance and that generation's gay community, and how they were so brave in overcoming this, and how they came together and banded together to get the world and their and respective governments to realize that AIDS is it's a it's an important thing to look at. It should
Yeah.
not be ignored
Mm-hmm.
just because it's afflicting a portion of the community that you don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great mini series. It came out earlier in January, and I recommend you check it out on HBO.
Okay, cool, cool,
Yeah.
cool.
What's your number four?
My number four is Lupin, and I'm just gonna lump part one and part two in since they were both out this year anyway.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, Lupin has been like it's just been a joy to watch. Easy breezy, bingeable. It has all the kind of like elements that I feel like I've been missing for a while for this kind of like
Mm,
espionage thriller detective story.
mm,
That I feel like we haven't gotten a good one in a while, you know.
yeah.
Omar Sy is just like he is just effortlessly kind of like sexy
Mm,
and stylish and just so smart. But he's no superhero.
mm-hmm.
He is fallible and vulnerable as a man. And you know he has to navigate all of that, which I feel like makes it kind of really really real. I binged part one on a whim. I binged part two, you know, as soon as it came out, and I really really enjoyed that. Are there better TV shows to be in my top
Sure.
five? Sure, but
Yeah.
we've already talked about those, right? And this is just one of those things that like I have absolutely no regrets turning on,
Yeah.
from episode one.
Yeah, yeah. Same. I really, really enjoyed part one in particular.
Yep.
I do feel like towards the end of part two, the it starts to like fall apart a bit, like logically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. There is a franticness
Mm.
that is very strange, right? Like, and feels very very out of tone and out of character for it. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if that's because they were trying to wrap things up very quickly.
Mm.
It didn't feel as well paced. I think like especially the third act
Part two.
of part two really did feel like very a lot more messy than that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they did give us a good enough conclusion to that. I would
Yeah.
watch it if you know it became if there was a second season. Um,
Yeah.
and
100%.
and hopefully you know I mean like just because it lends itself perfectly both in terms of the genre of show it is to have like multiple kind of like uh well episodic or maybe even serialized seasons
Mm-hmm.
and I will watch it so long as it continued to deliver the parts that I like. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of
All
those
right.
kind of shows. Yeah. What's
Yep. Yep.
your number four?
My number four is a show from England. Actually, whoa, my first show was also from England. So another show from England, called We Are Lady Parts. We Are Lady Parts is about an all-woman female Muslim punk band in London. It's really really funny,
Yeah.
and it follows a PhD student named Amina Hussein, who is convinced to join a Muslim female punk band called Lady Parts as its lead guitarist. And it is just such a breezy, easy watch, 6 half-hour episodes. It does a bit. It's a bit like Rami, where if you're Muslim, you get the jokes more, but it kind of works as a universal coming of age story too. It helps that the songs themselves are truly quite hilarious, and it's just like such a potent, short, breezy, easy watch. One of my favorite comedies of the year, with one of my favorite ensembles of the year. So yeah, I mean, I love this British, well, not this British, this European 6 episode formats, because Lupin was French also, and it's also 6 episodes.
Yep.
It's just it gets in and out, and you don't really have much to complain about.
Yeah. Yeah. This looks fairly interesting. I just bookmarked it. I'm definitely gonna catch that.
Sweet.
For sure.
What's your number three?
My number three is Master of None season three.
Ah, yeah.
Master of None season three. Oh man, I mean, like we've been big fans of Master of None. Since the very very onset. I think. Have we actually talked about it? I don't
No,
think
we
so.
haven't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've never actually talked about Master of None because not quite genre,
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. But yeah, really, really love season one and two. I think it's something that we've talked about privately in our own kind of like conversations and hangouts.
Yep.
I really, really like what was the subtitle of it again? Moments in Love. I think like Lena
Mm.
Waithe and Naomi Aki like delivers like some really great, powerful performances. It is slow, definitely, but like I do feel like it is the most mature of
Mm.
the seasons that we've gotten so far.
Yep.
And like it's beautifully shot, it's got great dialogue and just like these moments of like tenderness and tension that like it's just very solid. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very very taken by, I think, Lena Wave in particular, right? Like, I don't think I've seen her have the opportunity to flex her acting muscles like this.
Mm.
In all the other seasons, she's kind of like sidekick, and she plays like a certain type of character, well, herself. But you've never seen this side of her,
Mm.
in any other role before, which I love. It really is very very good. I really, really did enjoy it, and something very different, right, from the
Yeah.
usual thing that Aziz Ansari brings. Not that I don't like that, but like it's a
Mm.
breath of fresh air within this franchise for sure.
Yes. With the exception of like season two, the Thanksgiving episode that Lena Waithe wrote and directed.
Mm,
Yeah, that was like almost a backdoor pilot for the season three, lah, which is
yeah.
almost an entirely new show. So yeah, that's great. I love that Lena Waithe is getting it. I love that every season of Master of None seems to have a very different influence to it. Like season one had a very American dramedy shooting style,
Uh-huh.
which you see in a lot of the dramedies that we've covered so far. And season two had a Italian neo-realism,
Mm,
Francois Truffaut style,
yeah.
and this third season with its static camera shots, very still frames. It's very Ingmar Bergman, very Swedish.
Yeah.
So I like like they're trying for like very different stylistic touches for every season, and I'm eager to see what they do next.
Yeah.
Very 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 cool touch. Speaking of dramedies, my number three is a show called Hacks,
Hmm.
which I feel is one of the best new shows of 2021. It navigates the dark mentorship that forms between a legendary Las Vegas comedian played by Jean Smart called Deborah Vance. She is, as I mentioned, this legendary Las Vegas comedian who sort of started to phone it in because she doesn't care anymore, until she becomes sort of a mentor to an entitled 25-year-old comedy writer who can't find any other job because she got cancelled on Twitter. And this plunge into the stand-up comedy scene, it explores a world full of assholes and bullies and martyrs. A world where trauma gets transmuted into laughs. And Hacks is the rare comedy that not only nails its punchlines, but brutally deconstructs the pain, effort, and genius it takes to make jokes land. Gene Smart and co-star Hannah Eidbender, I think is how you pronounce the name,
Yeah.
are spectacular in this love letter to the comedy trenches. Also on HBO, so there you go. I seem to have a lot of HBO shows.
Yeah, I mean, if HBO is killing it, they're killing it for sure.
Yeah, I didn't even realize I had so many HBO shows. Okay, yeah. What's your? Have you seen Hacks, by the way?
No, I have it bookmarked, but I haven't dived into it yet. I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, this looks like it's going to be good, and I'm glad to know that
Mm.
my sensing of that was right.
Yeah, Jean
Yes.
Smart. Jean Smart is always great. She's great in everything. Like I almost hesitate to call it a Jean Smart renaissance because Jean Smart hasn't gone away in 50 years.
Yeah, it's kind of
It's
nuts, right?
it's just that recently, because we are genre people, right? And we saw Jean Smart sort of reemerge in Legion
Mm-hmm.
and then reemerge again in Watchmen. And it's weird that she picked two very artsy superhero shows to kind of revitalize her career.
Yeah,
And then like she starts to go into more prestige stuff like Hex and Mare of Easttown, and
yeah,
she's everywhere these days. Like every time I turn on fucking HBO, Jean Smart is on it. She's on every HBO show.
yeah. It's something lovely. Yeah, May of Easttown barely made my top five actually. Um,
Almost there, right?
yeah,
Honorable
almost
mention.
there. It was, yeah. As an honorable mention, if you guys want to see more of Jean Smart and
Yeah.
Kate
Winslet.
Winslet, I was about to say Blanchett for some reason. Yeah,
Yeah.
but Kate Winslet. Yeah. So, what are we up there now? Okay, number two.
Number two.
Number two. I'm going to pick Mythic Quest season 2.
Very nice. Yeah.
Well, because we love Mythic Quest and we've already established that.
Mm-hmm.
Cue you guys back to the episode where we talk about Mythic Quest and their amazing additional episodes that we got for the quarantine.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, as always, smartly written, very well performed, very sentimental, and I think like building on top what they did for season 1 and for the special episode.
Mm-hmm.
We continue with the gang. Well, most of them being back after quarantine. Everyone's back in the office, and
Mm-hmm.
and then, like shenanigans continue as well. Like there's a bit too. I don't want to spoil anything,
Mm-hmm.
just because like there's a lot of kind of like twists about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
We see kind of like the full relationship between Ion and Poppy as the newly
Mm-hmm.
promoted co-director within the office space now. Like
Mm-hmm.
we see that kind of unfold,
Mm-hmm.
and then the more office romance,
Mm-hmm.
more unresolved issues on the side of like CW. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of stuff going on, and true to form, like like it doesn't miss a beat.
Yeah.
Still one of my favorite workplace comedies.
Mm-hmm.
And just the fact that I think I've spent a lot of like this pandemic playing video games.
Yeah.
Like it's good for a laugh, especially if you're a gamer, right? Like we've already said that before.
Mm-hmm.
Season 2 is just more of the same, and it's just really fun.
Season two is like real specialness. Like what made it really, really fucking cool
Yeah,
is that it spends the majority of the season taking down Poppy
yeah,
and her delusions of grandeur. Like it's easy if you're in. I similarly, like, I've been in workplace situations. I see like a boss who's just so full of himself,
yeah,
like Iron is. He's so delusional, blah blah blah. Everyone thinks you can do a better job.
yeah.
And Poppy is finally given the option and the position to do what Iron does. And Poppy quickly discovers that she's not that good,
No,
or she's not.
she's the same.
She isn't, and the real realization of the season is that Poppy doesn't work without Iron, and Iron doesn't work without Poppy.
Yeah.
And the twist at the end of the season, I mean, I wouldn't reveal it, lah, but it fundamentally changes the show,
Yes.
in a very big way. Of course, like as is tradition now, I guess, like every mid season of Mythic Quest, delivers an incredible one of time period set piece,
Yep.
a
Yep.
period piece, this time focusing on CW's backstory as a sci-fi writer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Again, like these one-off mid-season episodes seem to steal the show
Yep.
from the whole series,
Yep.
and it's frequently the best part of the show. And again, the CW's backstory flashes out a character that is essentially a one-note joke until he's not, you know, and
Oh
until
man.
you like until you reveal like heck the fucking episodes, and it's entitled backstory with an exclamation mark,
Yeah.
and he is really given a great backstory that flashes him out.
Yeah. It's so good. I mean, Sailor B has always been kind of one of my favorite
Mhm.
side characters, but for him to be front and center like that and to be given such depth from
Yeah,
just a single episode is just like so funny. It's so good.
like him fucking carrying his Hugo Award, right? The first episode of the first season,
Yeah.
and it makes such a funny gag, like sad
Yeah.
now that you know that he plagiarized Isaac Asimov.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, really, really, really good. So yeah, that was your number two. My number two is a show called Girls Five Ever,
Yeah.
which is not available in Singapore. Actually, it's on a streaming service called Peacock. So you can guess how I got this, but it's a really, really good show. It is a bizarre. I don't know what the term bizarre. Yeah, it's fucking bizarre, lah. It's like it is. It is. I think you should leave with Tim Robinson. Bizarre. It's produced by the team behind Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and 30 Rock.
Yeah.
The Tina Fey crew.
Mhm.
It's utterly hilarious series, and what the best sitcom of 2021, in my opinion. Girls Five Ever follows the surviving members of a C-list late 90s girl group. I don't mean Spice Girls level. I don't even mean Atomic Kitten level. It's below that, right? A C-list late 90s girls group who reunite in their 40s to mount a comeback. The only reason they tried to mount a comeback is because a mumble rapper sampled their hit song, and then they kind of returned to prominence. There's a lot of memes about them and stuff. And they're like,
Yep.
hey, let's make a comeback. The show is a laugh frenzy. It's packed to the brim with absurdist pop song parodies,
Hmm.
delirious dialogue, and like these kind of densely constructed jokes that it's hard to get used to. I've seen two shows by these writers, like Kimmy Schmidt and Teddy Rock.
Hmm.
I still cannot get used to just how dense the joke construction is, like how many jokes are within a single line.
Yep.
Like you just gotta keep pausing every like couple of seconds to just like mentally work out like the acrobatics of that joke.
Hmm.
So because of that, like it's hard to LOL, but it's one of those like, oh my god, I'm so stupid, kind of thing. And then like you rewatch it, you find another joke within that joke, and it's great. It mocks the music industry, it mocks millennial trends, it mocks celebrity culture from every angle
Oh,
imaginable. It's elevated by a really winsome cast. The lead actress is Sarah Bareilles, who you may know is an indie singer songwriter.
love Sarah Bareilles.
Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, so she plays the lead character here. Uh, Also, the second co-star is Renee Ellis Goldsberry, who you may know as Angelica from Hamilton.
Hmm.
So yeah, she's a great singer as well. Busey Phillips and Paula Pell are in it. They're like the least talented members of the group, but all girl groups have those like members who can't really sing. Yeah, Girls Five Ever is weird. It's a pure musical comedy joy that feels like I've been like trust into an alternate reality that I can't quite make sense of,
Yeah.
but works. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of Girls Five Ever yet.
I've seen the trailer.
Mhm.
It piqued my interest basically because like big fan of Sarah Bareilles. I wasn't always actually. It was only until like I watched her live. Um,
Yeah, she came to Singapore. Yeah.
yeah, and like I was just very taken by like her personality and stage banter between songs, right? Like,
Mm.
and of course, like I think her songwriting has changed dramatically since like her first album when she was discovered.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just like a big fan of that. And I saw her in the trailer, and then I saw Angelica in the trailer, and I was just like, okay, you know what? If it's a musical thing, and we've got these two, I'm kind of down. I'm kind of down, you know. And then
Mm-hmm.
Tina Fey, executive producer, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
by the same writers of yeah. So like I've had it on my watch list, but again, right, it's not as easily accessible as some of the other stuff on my list.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't actually touched it yet.
Okay.
But it's good to know that there's something good there as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think this one is gonna last to the end of the year, so yeah, I'm gonna make you watch it eventually.
All
So yeah,
right.
don't worry about that. Yeah, Ghost Forever is probably gonna be in my top five to the end lah. It's
Okay.
it's that good.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
What's your number one?
My number one. Oh, I hate to beat on a dead horse, considering this is going to be the third time I'm talking about it. My number one is Odd Taxi.
Yeah.
So for the third time, I apologize to you, the people who have heard me bang on about this, and then hit the bang about this, and then me reiterating one more time. Um,
It's three straight episodes that we talk about Odd Taxi.
yeah, three straight episodes we're talking about Odd Taxi because it really is that good, and I
Yeah.
feel remiss if we don't kind of like shout it out because it really isn't getting that much love. Um,
Mm.
and it's not that it's not good; it's just that it's not typical of anime, right? Like in
Yeah.
general, it
Yeah.
is a very long time when you get these kind of like high ooh, this is might be a bit like this is high art anime, right? Like you're not gonna get this very often. There are very few that are like it, just in terms of like the writing, the pacing, the plot, the storytelling, the voice acting, the music, like all of it isn't grand, it isn't epic, it doesn't have, like this incredible like violent fights, but it is charming and it is um absolutely compelling if you give it a chance, right?
Yeah.
Best yeah, so I'm putting it in this list because I want to elevate it past just the realm of anime that we tend to
Yeah.
keep these things into, with the exception of like the new big three, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
shonen, your My Hero, your Jujutsu Kaisen, your Demon Slayer and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, an unknown gem just kind of like surfaces from the
Yeah.
realms of anime into great TV, and I think Odd Taxi deserves to be shouted out again for the third time
Mm.
in three episodes. Yeah,
Yeah, 100% agree. All Taxi would have made my top five as well if Isa hadn't like already put it in his lah.
yeah.
Again, one of the best enemies of this season. Absolutely strong like season. year for anime
Oh
actually, because
yeah,
I've
absolutely.
already talked about To Your Eternity and all of it at length. You can listen to the previous genre if you want to hear my thoughts on it.
Hmm.
Also over the past day, I spent 6 hours and I finished One Egg Priority, which I think believes in the S tier of this year
Oh
as well.
yeah, One Egg
It,
Priority is so good.
it's very very good. It's very very good. Like there is a special episode that just launched, that just dropped this week,
Yep.
which kind of ruins the show for me. I didn't like it. But if you want to take the special episode out of the season, because
Yeah,
it's not really part of the season, right?
it's not.
Like it,
It's one of those OVA things that they drop just to kind of like boost like okay, so anime is really about DVD sales, right? Like the special
yeah,
packages and all of that. That's how they make the bulk of their money in order to be able to fund or at least convince the studios to make more.
yeah,
And you always need to have like special episodes that are packed into the DVD. And clearly the quality of production and storytelling and all that varies very wildly from franchise to franchise, so it's one
mm-hmm,
of those, right? And like
mm,
like I think you're right, like it does actively spoil the series.
a
um
bit. Some of the revelations also retroactively make some things less meaningful.
yeah,
And also the fact that of the 44-minute episodes, 30 minutes was a recap. It's a bit ridiculous, you know.
yeah, and I mean,
Yeah,
like, it's just part of the industry, not one that I particularly enjoy.
yeah.
Most of the time, like when I'm talking about like the best series and stuff like that, I will tend to leave out anything that's not important to the main line.
Mm.
So I mean, yeah,
Yeah, but if you're talking about just the 12 like season, 12 episode season of One Day Priority, marvelous. You know, one of the best of the year as
yeah,
well, lah.
solid,
So yeah,
solid stuff.
gotta shout that out. My number one is For All Mankind season two.
Ooh,
It is a sci-fi series from Ronald D. Moore, who is best known for Deep Space Nine, who's best known for Battlestar Galactica, obviously.
mm,
It's a meticulously crafted alt history that imagines what would happen if it was the Soviets who landed the first man on the moon. The first season of For All Mankind, I reviewed it on Genre Equality, was
yep,
wildly ambitious, also very uneven. Thankfully, this second season is a stellar improvement. It takes full advantage of the what if scenarios,
yep,
alongside the compelling workplace drama at NASA. The characters now feel specific and three dimensional, which in turn makes the show's interpersonal dynamics vastly more interesting, which is why For All Mankind sort of soars this season. You know, its final 3 to 4 episodes, I'm going to say like its final back half of the season, right?
mm,
Like the 5 episode stretch all the way to the finale.
yeah.
It's like if I were to list like the 5 best episodes of the year, it would be like those 5 episodes. It's just like,
Damn.
it's one of the best closes to a show I've ever seen.
Uh
Like sometimes you gotta wait. Like I mean, we're talking about Loki, right? Like you gotta wait until like the last like episode or the last 2 episodes. But then like the midway point feels like you're hitting like high gear,
huh.
and it's just like non-stop thrilling. Or, like from episode 5 all the way to episode 10, it's
Yeah.
just like it feels like a 5 hour movie that just builds and builds and builds and builds that you can't stop watching. It's incredible. It's one of the best 5 episode stretches I've ever seen.
Nice.
For All Mankind is just marvelous. One of the best TV shows
Yeah.
now lah, that I've seen. It's a bit sad that in season one, when I recommend to people, like people tend to drop off like middle of season one,
Yeah,
and
I
I'm like,
dropped off after 3 episodes, but I mean,
yeah, yeah.
it's
I I
yeah,
I know a lot of shows like that. Agents of Shield, Legends of Tomorrow, like two of our favorite shows, like have not strong season ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. But I mean, it's good to know. It's good to know that like it's picked up and it's bring. I'm definitely going to. I will put up with season one because we've been there, we've
Mm,
done that, and a lot of the time, more often than not, it tends to be worth it for series like this.
mm.
So yeah, I'm definitely putting that back on my list. Oh god.
Yeah. Admittedly, like the last 2 episodes of season one are like really, really good as well. Like it's really like towards the end of season one when it starts to pick up.
Yep.
It's a Ronald D. Moore kind of. I mean, the guy comes from Star Trek. It's a kind of a Star Trek thing. Like he takes like you take one full season to really get your footing.
Yeah.
And I know like these Star Trek guys, Brian Fuller's and Ronald D. Moore, the guys who came up from that camp,
Yeah.
tend to have like shaky season ones, and then like season
Mm,
two like goes like fire. So I give them a bit of a runway lah, to let them grab me lah.
okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely gonna give it another shot.
Yeah, definitely. We will be back in a couple of weeks to talk about some of the hidden gems of the year.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff that didn't get awards recognition, but I wished it did. There's a French film called Rocks,
Hmm.
which is legitimately my number one film of the year. No disrespect to the four films that we just talked about. Like Rocks is the best. Number two would be Quo Vadis Ada, and then it would be like the four films that we talked about. Shiva Baby is such a weird film,
Okay.
so fucking weird. It's a comedy that is more like a horror film. You know it when you see it lah.
Okay.
It's fucking bizarre. Collective, in my opinion, should have won best documentary at the Oscars. It's a shame that it didn't. It's a Romanian documentary
Hmm.
that just keeps. You know those journalism documentaries that like you wait until the end and there's like one or two big reveals when they uncover the conspiracy.
Yeah.
You know, like Collective has like I kid you not like six or seven big what the fuck things that they discover that just keeps getting more mind blowing with every discovery. You know, like 20 minutes into the film, right? Like you would think like, oh yeah, this is the big conspiracy, right? And then it just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper until you're just like, what the fuck is wrong with Romania, guys? You know, that kind of um the climb is I don't know lah. I honestly shouldn't be putting the climb here, but it made me so happy watching the film that I just couldn't. It's one of those like I objectively know that there are flaws with it, but I love it so much because like it's the things that are good about it are so good that
Yep.
I just had to put it here lah. Like there are a lot of films better than The Climb, but I can't wait to see what you think of it because I know there are issues with The Climb, like, and we're gonna get into it lah.
Yeah, for sure.
But what makes it so good also makes it like compensates for the flaws. So we'll get into that in a couple of weeks. And then genre equality 44 happens. We got Loki, we got not Black Widow. I almost said Black Panther.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know. So those are our two big topics: Masters of the Universe. Oh my gosh, yeah. Space Jam 2, which does not look good. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and lots of other things. Show Hunters, the movie also comes out. So yeah, big episode of genre coming up. We have a few big episodes for you coming up. So can't wait to talk about all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Good stuff coming up in
yeah.
the range, guys. So keep in tune. If you are watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube, rather, please hit like if you like the episode. And
Mm-hmm.
hit subscribe if you haven't already, just so that we actually release stuff a bit earlier than we post on our Facebook. So if you
Mm.
are subscribed to either our Mixcloud or our YouTube, you will get the episodes a couple of days earlier. If
Yeah,
that
yeah.
incentivizes you, it really helps us out in terms of the
Mhm.
YouTube algorithm. It's its own hustle. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you
Yeah,
guys
thanks,
soon.
man. Yeah, till then, this has been Hit Zero.
I'm Isa.
Subscribe, guys. Goodbye.
Ciao.